annual situation, or our tags are coming up on our vehicles. I need to address those specifically. This is how nutrition works as well. We're eating those nutrient-dense foods, but they have to be delivered to the right place so that they can be sorted out, right? So that absorption is going to happen in our small intestines and in our large intestine lastly. So when we eat our food and it goes into our stomach, there's important gastric juices and something called hydrochloric acid, and also some digestive enzymes that are located in our actual stomach, the lumen, or our stomach bag, if you will, right? Your tummy. And our food has to be broken down really, really well, especially our proteins and our fats. So if you take a little bit of steak and you put it on your counter maybe, and you take a donut and you put it on your counter, or I don't know, a piece of bread or whatever you want it to be, and you were to pour acid on those, I think the bread's going to break down really, really fast, right? It's just going to smush out. It's going to tackle it. Well, that steak is very, very dense, and it's going to need a little bit more time and a little bit more work and a lot more acid. I'd say 99% of the people that walk through the door of my practice are not equipped with enough hydrochloric acid to properly break down their protein. Now, a lot of them come here with heartburn. And they go to the doctor, and the doctor says, well, that burns. Well, let's put the fire out. And they often give them something called a PPI, or proton pump inhibitor, which basically stops your body from producing and secreting hydrochloric acid in your stomach. The theory is this: if there's burning, let's put the fire out, put the fire out. But what happens is, where your stomach and your esophagus, which is the tube that after you chew your food, it goes down your throat, that tube is called your esophagus. There's like a little flap there called your lower esophageal sphincter, LES. Well, when you have food churning around, I call it your witch's cauldron in your stomach, it gets all bubbly and in there from the acids doing their job and breaking it down. That acid will kind of like boil up and spurt up a little bit. And when your LES valve, or that little flap, senses that, it closes and it keeps your witch's cauldron down like a pressure cooker, right? None of that coming up here, because your esophagus is lined with mucus, and it's a very tender. Your esophagus is very tender, and it can't take that acid. And boy, oh boy, that your stomach should be very, very acidic. On average, around 1.3 to 1.5 on the pH scale, it's called, which measures your acidity or your alkalinity of your stomach. Needs to be very acidic, and there needs to be a good amount of that acid in there. Now, if you don't have a healthy amount of acid because your system, your synergistic system, is not properly balanced, then oftentimes that LES, that little valve, will just stay open. You'll never get the signal to close because, to put it, in my witch's cauldron analogy, the acid's just too far down. It's too low. It's too shallow, like a fish tank that doesn't have enough water in it. So it just stays open. But occasionally, what little acid is in there will bubble up a little bit, and it will start to scar your esophagus right there. And that's a big problem, that scarring. And I tell you, one test I don't want to have to do is I don't want to be scoped. That gagging feeling of something going down. No way, Jose. And that's typically how they check to see if you have that kind of scarring. So to kind of dial back a little bit, that is one of the first processes of digestion. It's about number 3 in the order of digestion. Is that the protein and fat that you just consumed? We need to make sure that enough acid and gastric juices and digestive enzymes are breaking it down. It's food, or a bolus. When it's food in your mouth, it's bolus after you chew it, and it becomes chyme, CHYME. It becomes chyme once it leaves your stomach, and it goes down out another little valve, and it goes into your small intestine. there's a few different parts of the stomach, and there's different parts of your small intestine as well. And the part I'm going to talk about now is where most leaky gut happens. It's called your duodenum. Duodenum, your duodenum. Now the chyme comes down in your duodenum. Now your stomach has a special mucosal lining that allows for it to be protected from all of that acid and all the witch's brew that's happening, right? But your duodenum isn't. It has a mucosal lining, and there is a very tight cellular junction along that wall. And it's only like 1 cell thick, because the small intestine is where we are going to start the process of absorbing our nutrients into our bloodstream. So and depending on what type of nutrient or vitamin or mineral that it is going to determine where it's going to go, to the liver or straight to the bloodstream, to tissues, whatever. But that's why that cellular junction is so thin, but you have mucus that's protecting it. So if your food is properly broken down in the stomach, you have enough hydrochloric acid and you have enough gastric juices and digestive enzymes, then when your chyme hits the duodenum, it's not going to stay there for very long, and it's just going to slowly go through the small intestines, and it continues to, it's called peristalsis, kind of squeeze it along, and at various points, depending on what it is, it's going to take the nutrients, the B vitamins, the folate, the zinc, the iodine, the vitamin C, the D, the E, the K. It's going to take all of these out, and it's going to squeeze them out into the bloodstream at the appropriate times, right? All the way through your large intestine. And we'll talk about that next. I don't want to get going too far. Well, that's if the food presented itself properly in your duodenum. If it didn't, right? If your body doesn't have the right amount of hydrochloric acid and gastric juices and digestive enzymes, the pieces of food themselves are going to be too large for digestion. So now it's going to sit against the wall. I think of just like a lazy gang member. I call them gangsters, just sitting against the wall. Well, they're too acidic. They're too acidic, and if you didn't eat the proper healthy fats, then you're not going to have CCK, which is called cholecystokinin, which is going to be sprayed onto or secreted onto the chyme, which is going to take the acid value down and break down the fats even further. None of that's going to be happening. And that protein and that fat is just going to lean against the wall there, that tight cellular junction. It's going to become irritated and inflamed. And it's eventually the food is going to get rotten. It's going to rancidify. And it is going to create little holes. We call it intestinal permeability, right? Like cheesecloth. It's going to go right in. And now you've got large food particles that are entering your bloodstream. This is where autoimmune dysfunction happens, because our immune system is coursing. There's like little soldiers coursing through our bloodstream and in our lymphatic vessels, and they're just looking for invaders. And now they have found them. And your immune system is constantly asking 2 questions like, is this me and is this safe, right? Our body is not designed to attack itself. It's designed, our immune system, to keep outside things from attacking us, right? Well, the foods that we eat are outside environment that we're putting inside our body. But we're protecting ourselves in our digestive system. That's still considered a little bit of the outside. It's not inside our body until we absorb it through our digestive system. So it's kind of like the inside of a hose. It's the outside air and the outside environment. That's considered outside. But still, the inside of the hose, that water is still technically separate, right? Until it goes into that swimming pool or that dog water bowl if you're over here, or chicken water bowl, whatever it is. So that's the leaky gut. That intestinal permeability is when those nutrients and food particles are too large for proper absorption because they haven't been broken down, and they irritate the gut lining, and they enter the bloodstream at the wrong time, and they create our autoimmune system turns on, and they're having to deal with this issue, right? That's another talk of what happens deep into the immune system. What I want to do is keep talking a little bit about leaky gut. So let's just say you start eating whole foods, and you're still seeing, which most of my clients say, I've done diets, I've done this, I've done that, and I'm still having all of these problems. I've been to 5 or 6 doctors, and I just don't know what to do. And that's why they're working with me. And this is what I do, is I help them restore their body. I help them restore their digestive system. Because until we get your body the proper nutrients, remember, your vitamins and minerals are your spark plugs for all these little processes in your body. And take cramping, for example, right? You could be eating all the magnesium or potassium-rich foods that a person possibly can. But if you're not able to absorb the magnesium or the potassium, then you still are going to suffer with some of the side effects of deficiency, which might be like muscle cramping or muscle tightness or lower back problems or waking up in the morning feeling so stiff. And you're like, I don't understand. Because those are some of the vitamins and minerals that you need for your body to feel good and function well. So we're going to move on a little bit more. So I help my clients address not only the foods that they are eating, but also I help them establish an effective digestive system so they can properly absorb these foods, right? And that absorption continues on through your large intestines. So we hear a lot of words. I'm so grateful for the podcasts and for the blogs and for the books that are available right now for you to do exactly what you're doing right now and to be empowered and take charge of your life. But it is an awful lot of information. But I know that you've heard the word or term microbiome. Think of it as like a neighborhood. It's your neighborhood in your body. And every neighborhood has good people, and it also has some rather unsavory people, right? So I think of real estate. You never want to buy a house that is in a neighborhood that is on the downhill, right? Like this neighborhood has turned the corner. It's not coming back. There's too many slummy houses in it. There's too many broken down cars on the grass. There's too much crime here. I don't want to buy a house in this neighborhood. The unsavory characters have taken over, right? Well, occasionally, I have a friend that they go in and they might buy I live in the mountains, so there might be a street that has 5 or 6 houses on it that is full of just we call them old crack houses, that they go in and they actually clean them all up and they rebuild them and they get all the unsavory characters out of there and they reestablish the neighborhood, right? That would be the microbiome being restored, taking the unsavory characters out and rebuilding the houses. That's what I help my clients do. These are things that I have helped myself do. I am preaching from the seats. I'm in the congregation. I have had autoimmune issues and I have turned it around. And this is another reason for my passion, because if I can do it, you can do it. You can do it. You can reclaim your microbiome and get the unsavory characters out of the neighborhood. Now, why do we even care about it? This situation is called dysbiosis, right? Dysbiosis, which is just an imbalance of the good and bad bacteria or characters that live in your guts. We have bacteria all over us, right? And they actually are good for us. They're on our skin. They're in our digestive system, and they actually keep us healthy. And their byproducts are called short chain fatty acids. These good guys will actually eat the foods that we give them, and their excrement is short chain fatty acids that we actually use to function our bodies. And so everything is working well and we feel really good. But when dysbiosis occurs and we have too many unsavory or bad bacteria or unhealthy bacteria, they don't necessarily like the same kinds of foods or nutrients that the good bacteria like. Typically, bad bacteria, they like unhealthy food. They really love sugar.